Hello, Geshe.
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Yes.
As usual, good to see you all. Today, I want to mention a special celebration. Today is our 50th teaching.
Oh.
50. So good for us for struggling, not giving up, continue to trying to understand this important, not so easy topic. Very precious text. Thank you very much, Geshe, for this course. I'll mention it again for those who's just joined us, that today, yes, today we celebrate our 50th teaching on this topic. So we praise ourselves for struggling and not giving up, trying to understand this topic, and especially thank Geshe for teaching us. What a huge, rare opportunity. Good for us. I'll just mention that now you can see how you can show your appreciation by donating whatever you can and wish to donate. And we are happy to show appreciation to Geshe by giving the donation as much and whenever we can. The text is in our website. If you have questions, please make them to Dalit. Dalit will forward them to Geshe. And I think that's it. Anything else? Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Leora. All right, so let's start with some meditation. As usual, start with mindfulness of the breath. In the space in front of you, visualize Buddha Shakyamuni, who appears as the embodiment of great compassion, wisdom, understanding, reality. And appearing in the form of a fully ordained monk. And remember that he's inseparable from your lama or your lamas. And then visualize that the Buddha is surrounded by the great Nalanda master of India. And all the other realized beings of the Indian Buddhist tradition. And he's surrounded by the masters of the Tibetan tradition and Chinese, Vietnamese, masters of the Thai, Sri Lankan Buddhist tradition, and so forth. And even if you don't see them clearly, but just feel their presence. As an inspiration and encouragement for your personal practice. With all of them being inseparable from your Lama or your Lamas. And then think that you're surrounded by all sentient beings. Appearing in different forms. Obstructed from attaining lasting happiness by their own misapprehension of reality. Yeah, that misapprehension and its resulting suffering is not in the nature of their mind. And thus they all have the potential to become like the Buddha. And so start by generating affectionate love, which is a feeling of affection and closeness towards all these endless sentient beings. Out of a feeling of endearment. And then focusing particularly on the fact that these endless sentient beings are suffering endlessly. Generate great compassion. The wish, may they be free from suffering and its causes, and may I be able to protect them from all their sufferings, all their problems, and that which causes those. And that wish then grows stronger. It grows into determination. The determination, I will do whatever I can to protect all sentient beings from their basic misapprehension and the resulting delusions and sufferings. In that way, generate a special altruistic attitude. And since we can only accomplish this if we become enlightened ourselves first, so let's generate bodhicitta, determination to become fully enlightened for the welfare of all sentient beings. It is with this motivation that we will also continue to study Chandrakirti's entry into the middle way. We're studying this for the welfare of all sentient beings. And without letting go of our motivation, let's recite the prayers. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits, of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits, of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits, of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And so to strengthen our determination to dedicate our activities for the welfare of sentient beings, may all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from happiness that is free from suffering. And may all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. And then directed at the front visualization, the Buddha and so forth, who's inseparable from your Lama. Reverently I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time. And rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence. And turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of others to the great enlightenment. Okay. All right. So, having said our motivation, excuse me. So, well, I don't think I've received any questions. Sometimes when I get a lot of emails, but Dalit, you didn't send me anything, did you?
I'm sorry, I just sent today.
Oh, no problem.
I couldn't do it before. So
no problem at all. Then we'll do it next time. We'll do it next time. No problem. Okay, thank you. Okay, so, well, for what comes next week, anyway, we need to start with that anyway. So last week we already started with this particular meditation to become aware, of course, of our interdependence with other beings in the sense of how beneficial others are in so many different ways. People that we personally know, how they benefit us, people we may not know, and nonetheless how they benefit us, and then how people also benefit us on a spiritual level. And so in a way, it's a loose kind of way of thinking of people we're really close to, people that we don't know, and people who we may have a hard time with. So that all these, and usually the way we deal with people, the way we relate to people, is that we kind of categorize them in that way. So someone I like, someone I don't like, and all those I don't care about. So it's a very spontaneous kind of classification, and it keeps changing, of course. And it's temporary since it is changing, and there are often very superficial reasons. But to generate that equal sense of all sentient beings are precious. Each one of them is so precious in that we're all interdependent. We're all connected. We're connected to everyone. So not just humans, but connected to all the animals, to all the other living beings around us, directly or indirectly. And it is through their existence that we can greatly benefit. And we need to become aware of that again and again. So when it comes to those we're really close to, like our parents, our siblings, friends, and so forth, of course, they benefit us greatly. So to just appreciate what they have done for us without holding on to them and wanting to, own them is maybe just said too much, but not letting them go, being so attached, wanting them to make us happy, but just appreciating what they have done with this kind of sense of letting go of our attachment towards them, just appreciating everything they've done. And possibly if we feel we have a difficult relationship, especially with our parents, because we focus usually on something that have done wrong, and we get over it and over it and over it. And sooner or later, we have a feeling they're responsible for this and that, and I have a hard time with my parents, but we totally forget everything they've done for us. So to spend this coming week, again, spend more time on reflecting on exactly that, everything they've done for us, our teachers, everything we've learned. We knew nothing when we were born. I mean, we knew how to turn our head and pee and poo, I guess, and, eat and drink, and that was it. Well, eating was hard. So Basically, we had to learn everything from scratch. And we learned it from others. We learned it from those around us. Oftentimes, they were very patient, picking us up when we fell down, showing us how to walk, how to talk, how to eat, and so forth. Showing us everything from scratch, teaching us to read and write and be good at math and what have you. So to really become aware of that, oftentimes we feel our failures are others' faults and our successes is our own. We've caused this on our own. We are responsible for our success, but our failure, that's others. So to kind of turn it around, well, our success is others. Our success is others. Our failure, well, failure, what's failure anyway? We can learn from our mistakes. It's an opportunity. But in particular, all the things we can do. So instead of generating arrogance, a sense, I've done it. No, everyone's done it. Everyone's been part in that, directly or indirectly. And so this feeling of gratitude and understanding my happiness is not enough. My happiness is not enough. I need to put all my effort into the happiness of everyone else because, well, it comes back to me anyway. So even if it's out of the self-cherishing, well, as the psalmist says, there is the self-cherishing mind. Let's be wisely selfish. As long as it's there, let's use it to our own advantage, this self-cherishing mind. But also in general, all these people we don't know and we actually don't care about, but if it wasn't for them, so those neighbors that we only ever see from afar, or those people in different countries, or I don't know, the bus driver, the fruit sailor, whatever, the fruit sale person, all of those, directly or indirectly, their existence, their mere existence, well, is responsible for the fact that there are roads and shops and so forth. If there weren't other people, we wouldn't have cities, we wouldn't have cars and so forth. So to think individually that it's all due to the effort of these people, and even though they do it for money and so forth, but who cares? I mean, it's their existence and their hard work still helps us so much, brings food on our table, brings money into our pockets. I mean, we need people to make the money. It's not just falling off the sky. And so we need people to provide us with jobs. We need people to, well, be in charge, and other people buying the stuff that we may be part producing and so forth. So if you really think in detail, we're so dependent on others, and it's a good dependence. Dependence often has a negative connotation in the West, like I want to stand on my own feet and so forth. Well, that's different. Of course, if we have a certain degree of dependence and strength, all right, yes, but let's face it, we are dependent on others. And there's a good reason to be really, really grateful. So again, for this week, to generate this again and again, to be grateful to everyone's existence, to the tiniest fly and flea and, well, all the other insects. Of course, nowadays in particular, we understand how important they are for the environment, the birds and all the other living beings, but also all the humans, all the human beings on this planet and on other planets as well. So how precious they are. And of course, if we have a hard time generating love and compassion towards others, it's usually the people we know and we don't like. Well, there may be some we don't like, but we don't know them. But it's usually people we have a hard time with. Those are the ones where we go, yeah, I want to become enlightened for everyone except that one. It's not possibly a conscious thought, but there's this like, that one person. If they were just a little nicer, it'd be so much easier to wish to become enlightened for them. No, but understand that if we didn't have these difficult people around, no one would give us the opportunity to practice patience. I mean, a kind, sweet person, it's very difficult to get angry with them. So again, especially on a spiritual level, they're very important in terms of practicing patience and love, compassion, true love and compassion, to look beyond their faults, their shortcomings, which we all have ourselves anyway, and to see the good side in people, the qualities in those people, and to sincerely wish them to be happy, to understand one day they'll be just like the Buddha. They'll be Buddhas themselves, so just like Buddha Shakyamuni. And so to remember that all the spiritual qualities, I mean, you couldn't have bodhicitta if there weren't all sentient beings to wish to become enlightened for. So just bodhicitta wouldn't be possible. There's such a precious mind, which I'd like to remind you again and again, generator. Do not let go. Like I said before, this should be your best friend, your closest companion. It should be always somewhere in the back of your mind. Remember it when things are going well, when things are going badly, when they're just going neutral. Again, set yourself an app or whatever you want to do it if you can't remember. And if you remember, just refresh it. Keep refreshing it. Keep refreshing it. But refreshing it, and that's important. And His Holiness has talked about this on many occasions. It needs to come deep from deep within. When you do a meditation, when you reflect on something, it shouldn't be just going through the motions like, yeah, right, what comes next, what comes next, what comes next. No, there should be a real feeling from deep within. This is also what I try to bring up at the end of each session when we do the meditation. And I tell you at the very end, whatever conclusion you've come to, focus on that. So it should really be something that moves you from deep within. It's like, wow, this is really true. This is real. So even if you have to fake it, try to bring about this deep feeling so that it actually affects you on the psychological level, on a deeper level, and affecting us in our daily life. So similarly, with this love and compassion, you should be moved. You should be moved. These are qualities that are so amazing. And again, to kind of generate, it's like a deep joy. It's not just a feeling, it's a very deep feeling of joy. It can be so deep that it brings tears to your eyes. You may know, maybe if you were there today when Jadharamshi gave his teachings, he read a quote, and for a moment he was deeply touched out of his devotion for the Buddha. There's this verse where it says, like, I pay homage. You are the one that the gods and semi-gods pay homage to. And Rinpoche was really moved. You could tell he was near to break out in tears. I mean, he had this teary voice. So that kind of deeply moved joy. So whether it is joy for our lamas, joy that we have these incredible beings like Jadharamshi, like His Holiness, these incredibly realized beings around us, joy with regard to that, but also the joy that we have other people, other living beings, other sentient beings, and joy that there is enlightenment and the possibility for our mind to transform and generate these incredible qualities. That is really the way out of suffering. There's no way if you get a bigger car, a bigger house, more this, pay raise, none of those will give us this lasting deep happiness. So to remember that and really generate that sense of joy. So for this coming week, please continue, of course, what I said initially, this gratitude towards all sentient beings, the way I described it, but with real feeling. And of course, generate the mind of enlightenment again and again and again. If you can do it every hour, at least once, if you can do that, but at least 10 times. And if you can do, well, if you can't do that, 3 times. So don't let go of this mind of enlightenment. Very important. Okay, but then of course, having method on one side, again, we also need wisdom, because of course, just method on its own is not enough. And well, it's class 50 today. I wasn't aware. We've almost gone through it for a year. But as I said, we're coming closer. Today I'll finish the part up to eliminating or refuting the self, which is the last major topic. And I guess once we're done, once we're done with that, we're done with the 6th chapter, and we finish the main part of this text, and the rest won't take long. So, but we still got some work to do, at least for today. I'd like to finish verse 114 to 119. So if you can please go to the text, verse 114. Oh, there it is. Yes. All right. Now, with these last 6 or 7 verses, or 6 verses, now Chantakirti, what does he explain? He stresses once again that through understanding that things arise in dependence, we can overcome extreme views. So you'll notice during the study of this text. Sometimes lack of inherent existence is stressed, sometimes interdependence. The extreme views are refuted, extreme views that arise from our basic misapprehension. So it's different things are stressed. So here at the very end is kind of very end means and as end of this part before we continue to selflessness. Selflessness of passance. So what is stressed again at the end? Interdependence. All right. So actually implied in this part of the text is an opponent saying, kind of like, after all this refutation of the four extremes, like the four extremes, as you know, as they're described as part of the diamond splitter reasoning. So nothing arises from itself, from something inherently other, from both those two, or arises causelessly or without a cause. So having gone through those, well, how do things arise then? Someone asked, well, okay, so things don't arise in that way, but then how do they arise if they don't arise in those four ways? And the answer is given here by Chandrakirti. He says, well, because entities do not arise from no cause, they don't arise without a cause, and they do not arise from causes such as Ishvara, like a creator God. They do not arise from self, from other, or from both. They arise entirely through dependence. Okay, so again, if you look at world history, at the history of this world, of human history, I mean, animals don't really have the tendency to find out what created this and the other. Well, we don't know, but we don't, well, I think we can safely assume that they don't really think about these things. But humans have always wondered, where does everything come from? So in the past, of course, for many, many, well, thousands, millions of years, millions, well, quite a few years, so thousands of years, they've been coming up with the idea, well, God must have created and the gods or God. So here Ishvara is representative of that. So Ishvara is like, well, Hwangju in Tibetan, or Shiva, I guess it's a version of Shiva. So, or depending on the kind of Hindu or non-Buddhist system, certain spiritual systems in India believe that there was some entity, some deity creating this world. And of course, based on this belief, we have the three Abrahamic faiths: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Now, from a Buddhist point of view, no celestial being, no creator God has created, is responsible for arising. But then there are also, and you find this in the commentary, the explanation such as, for instance, the Samkhyas, that there's some primal substance, or there's a philosophical school, quite interestingly, the Vaisheshika, that they say that everything arises from these partless particles. Now, I'm thinking, well, nowadays in the modern world, a lot of people don't believe in God. I mean, with modern science, it seems incompatible. So therefore, this idea that everything has arisen from God, that has been left aside. So where does everything originate from? And here it's quite similar to the Vaisheshika to a certain degree. I mean, I have talked about the Charvakas, the materialistic school. So there are aspects very much in our modern society that are found, like Charvaka, hedonist views, of course, we find those. But also when it comes to the origin of everything, this view is all atoms. Everything comes from atoms. So who are we as a person? It's so interesting because we do think about this, even in a, well, definitely in a non-Buddhist context. It's a question that before we met Buddhism, we asked ourselves, why am I the way I am? Why are my parents different? Why are my siblings different? And so usually there are two aspects: nature and nurture. So nature as in like DNA. So we go back to particles. So it's the DNA. And we believe we're born with this DNA. For a layperson like myself, it's like, it seems to be this mystical DNA that tells me to be in a certain way, which of course is far from how scientists would explain it. And of course there's nurture, well, how other people behave towards us, our parents, etc. And we believe that's it. So past life and so forth, we don't even take into consideration. But there's a strong emphasis, what I'm trying to say is strong emphasis on the atoms that make up the DNA. And so our brain is responsible very much for our psyche, etc. There's nurture, of course, but mainly nature, as in like these atoms. And so this sense, everything arises from atoms, similar to the Vaisheshika in that sense. Okay, but from Buddha's point of view, well, especially when we talk of partless particles, this kind of foundation, there's this need that people have naturally, something solidly there, something solid based on which everything else arises. Of course, quantum physics doesn't provide us with that. I need to stress that. But just ordinarily, as ordinary people, well, the sense, the need for something solidly there, inherently, that gives rise to everything. And of course, from a Buddhist point of view, none of that can be found. So this is the fast verse, just stressing that. And then verse 115, we can go to verse 115. Yes, there it is. Now, here it says, in that things originate entirely through dependence. Whatever exists, it's in dependence on other things. Such concepts, extreme views as self-arising, cannot withstand analysis. So this reasoning of dependent origination rips to shreds the entire matrix of false views. So it's saying there's this basic view of morality, and then there are all these other extreme views. And understanding how things really exist gets rid of all other wrong views. So whatever wrong view there is, directly or indirectly, it can be traced back to this basic wrong view. So that can be, in some cases, can be difficult to explain that. Every wrong view can actually be traced back to our misapprehension of reality. Now, the question that arises, for instance, in the debate would be like, well, me perceiving horns of a rabbit, what does that have to do with inherent existence? So it seems like a little far-fetched to say, well, any mistaken view, any mistaken apprehension of my sense awarenesses, they have to do with the wrong view, the basic misapprehension of reality. Well, like I said, it's also indirectly. The fact we are born with limited sense consciousnesses, like, well, they're pretty limited. We can only see that much. There's so much we can't see. So the radio waves and X-rays and I don't know, whatever rays there are around, microwaves, we can't see them because our sense consciousness are so limited. So much sound we can't hear. We can only hear sound on a certain frequency, certain colors we can't see, etc. So all this we cannot perceive. And that's because we have this limited sense faculty, which of course is again the result of our basic misapprehension that results in certain other afflictive emotions, delusions, which in turn give rise to actions, which then, well, are propelling actions that throw us into the human existence, and of course completing actions, different karmic actions that determine who we are, and in a limited way. So it all goes back to that basic misapprehension, directly or indirectly. All right. Now, and with realizing emptiness, we'll be able to overcome all our restrictions. Okay, so understanding or removing the basic misapprehension, we can remove all the other misapprehensions. All right, so that's what it says in verse 115. Let me just check. I had some notes I put in here. I want to make sure I don't miss them. Where are they? Oh, yes. Okay. Now, if you then go to verse 116, there it tells us why it is that if we eliminate the basic misapprehension of reality, if we remove ignorance, that basic root misapprehension, well, if we get rid of that, we get rid of all the other extreme views. Well, why? Well, because such concepts would be in order, if real entities did exist, that no such entity exists has already been entered. Such concept would be in order. Oh, no, such concepts would be in order if real entities did exist. So these extreme views, they would all make sense extreme views such as the view of phenomena arising from themselves, from inherently other, and so forth. They would make sense. Some of them would make sense if phenomena really existed inherently. But that no such entity, inherent existence, does exist has already been analyzed. We've already been going through this. We've established that. And without such entity of inherent existence, those concepts, those other extreme views would not come to be. For example, without fuel, there can be no fire. So just as fire can only burn, fire can only really come into existence if there is some fuel that is to be burned. Well, in the same way, these other extreme views, and we have so many of them, they can only come into existence. These views can only come into existence if there's the basic misapprehension of reality. Excuse me, I have to drink something. I'm extremely thirsty. Sorry, just one sec. Gosh, I was quite thirsty. It's quite hot here. Okay, anyway, so having said this, therefore, what did we learn from verse 116? Well, that all our extremes, so 115 and 116 both, it tells us all our extreme views come from that basic misapprehension. And now when we hear extreme views, what do we mean with extreme views? Are these only the views such as believing things are arising from self or arising from other and so forth? Well, they're not just that. It's not just those views. They're also all the afflictive emotions. They're all wrong views. I've mentioned that before, and I'm sure you're aware of that. Well, for instance, anger completely exaggerates whatever we're angry with, the negative aspects of whatever we're angry with. Attachment completely exaggerates the positive aspects of whatever we're attached to. So exaggerating, adding more to the reality that's actually there. Well, again, I spoke about this before, that our basic misapprehension superimposes a type of reality onto things that they don't have. And based on that, our other emotions, our other afflictive emotions, and I'm saying other afflictive emotions because our misapprehension itself is already an afflictive emotion, but all the other ones that arise from these other extreme views, they're also exaggerating, giving more to things, adding more to, superimposing a reality onto things that they don't have. So for our anger, the person we're angry with is totally negative in that moment. Try and be angry with someone and think at the same time that just saved your life. Can't hold up your anger, because your anger cannot have perception of some positive aspect or gratitude as part of it and then be angry at that person. Impossible. You can't do that. So it's a good way to overcome anger. Just think of a positive quality of that person. Attachment, likewise, if you're totally attached to that person, a negative quality, if you think of something negative, it will reduce the attachment. It's not like with the anger, but it will definitely dampen that, oh, can't be without them kind of feeling. All right, so therefore, all these extreme views come from that basic misapprehension. Okay, so again, what does that show us? How is that relevant to us? Well, in our daily life, I mean, Rinpoche talked about it today so beautifully. What do we need? Attentiveness. Attentiveness based on mindfulness. Now, attentiveness, that we should also generate. So to be aware of our actions, body and speech, of course, but also be aware of that which brings forth these actions of body and speech, which is our mind. So what thoughts do we have? What extreme views do we have? What affliction? And we have lots of extreme views. And knowing it all, the blame can be put on one thing. The blame, not on others, but on that basic misapprehension. And to remember emptiness. It's a good reason in any situation. But things don't exist the way they appear. Let's remember. They don't exist that way. And again and again, it's a good reason to bring back emptiness. So not just bodhicitta the way I described before, but also make your second important companion emptiness. Remember, whatever you remember, from what you've learned. And sometimes it's helpful just to think things don't exist the way they appear. They don't exist the way they appear. Already that, and I've mentioned that before, can take away some of the sense of solidity that we automatically have when we look at a situation, when problems arise, and so forth. All right. Now, anyway, this is what we're told as part of verse 116. So that extreme views arise from the basic misapprehension of inherent existence. All right. And basically that, as I just said, emptiness is the cure to all our problems. Emptiness is that cure. And Lama Tsongkhapa stresses that again. He says, well, if you have the wrong view of floaters, if you apply eye ointment or you get treatment for this disease, the floaters that is responsible for that, well, then you get rid of these misapprehension. Same idea. So we have to cure the root. All right. Anyway, I want to say something, and I made this note, so I'm still looking for it. Oh yes, I think that's where it is. No. So I don't find it right now. But I wanted to say a few words. Oh, here it is. Yeah. So since I've mentioned it, that emptiness is really the solution to all our extreme views, and therefore including all our afflictive emotions, I want to say something once again about this. Just a thought I had this afternoon as I was reading the verses. What came to mind was, well, then the question, of course, that always arises is how do things actually exist? How is it if things don't arise from themselves, they don't arise from something inherently other? How do we say they arise? So, and this is just what came to mind, like a summary of that, basically. Well, first of all, things appear to us. Okay, in our daily life, things appear to us. We already mentioned conventional truth, describing them as appearances, different things appearing to our mind. Now, the question that may arise is, why do they appear? Well, because of karmic actions in the past. So that's the first thought. As in, like, well, think of preta being, think of celestial beings, think of human beings. If there's some liquid to a human being due to their karma, it appears as H2O. To a preta, it appears differently. To a celestial being, it appears differently. So we can basically explain the fact that things appear to us in a certain way, certain shapes, certain colors, certain laws of nature appearing to us as part of the environment that appears to us. Well, that is the result of our karmic action. That is the result of the propelling karma that propelled us into human existence. Okay, now that being the case, what do we do with these different appearances? We try to make sense of them. We categorize them. We put them into different categories depending on their function, their characteristics, and therefore their functions. And we categorize them. We make categories of table and car and cloud and sky and tree and plant. And the more details we find, the more characteristics we find that are not found in other phenomena, the more concepts we develop, right? So we don't do this on our own, no. Sometimes we come up with our own concepts, but oftentimes we just take on the concepts that have developed over time. And another way of describing that is we learn language. We learn language. We read books and learn about new concepts, and then they start appearing in a certain way now that we've separated them. Okay, you're definitely aware of that. Sometimes we become aware of emotions when we name them, okay, when we have a concept of them. All right, so we make sense of the appearances around us, which, well, its origin is of course our karma, etc., but we make sense of them through labeling. Okay, now having said all this, I think so far hopefully this makes sense. But then let's come to the idea of things arising, coming into existence. We talk about causes, things arising in dependence on causes. And that this doesn't happen inherently. Well, how can we account for that? Well, first of all, as I talked about, these appearances that we give names to, it's actually not that difficult to understand. They're appearances. So then independence on the function that I perceive, the functions that I give to it. I mean, I use a table in a certain way. So for me, it has this function. I call it a table, but from its own side, it's neither a table nor a cloud nor anything else. It needs that label. It needs that mind giving it that name, that applying that concept. So that already shows there's no table. It's not like there's a table that comes along and kind of tells everyone I'm a table, to say it in a really weird way. But basically, there's nothing from the side of the table itself that tells us it's a table. It's us labeling it that way. But let's go back to, how do things then arise? How can we say they arise in dependence, as Chandrakirti has said it, and do not arise inherently? Well, for that, I want to say this much. First, we need to understand the difference between a cause that is described as a substantial cause and a cooperative condition, because things arise from causes. We say things arise from causes. Okay, but what does that mean? Now, take a simple thing such as a cloud or a tree or a flower, okay? So they arise from substantial causes and cooperative conditions. Well, what does it mean, substantial cause? Well, whatever gave rise to this flower, whatever the flower was previously. So something has transformed to become a flower, right? Let's take the sprout, okay? It was a sprout. That sprout transformed to become a flower. And because that transformed to become the flower, we call it the substantial cause. So it's pretty easy that whatever has changed in order to become X, Y, and Z is the substantial cause of X, Y, and Z. That's it. Simple as that. So whatever it was, so in my own case, what is my substantial cause? Well, whatever it was that became me. Let's talk of me, myself, as a cow. In my previous life, let's say I was a cow. So cow Kelsang Wangmo wasn't called cow. Maybe I probably had a different name, whatever. So cow Emma or whatever. So cow Emma is my substantial cause, because cow Emma turned into, well, Kelsang Wangmo. So that's my substantial cause. All right. So in that way, it's pretty straightforward. But then what are cooperative conditions? Well, cow Emma became Kelsang Wangmo, turned into this living being, Kelsang Wangmo, with the assistance of other factors. It didn't just do it on its own, but there were other conditions, and they're called cooperative conditions. So that which changed the entity to transform, which helped the entity that was my substantial cause to transform in such a way that it became me in this case. That is the substantial cause, that entity that changed the substantial cause, and those factors that assisted it in that transformation, well, those are the cooperative conditions. So whatever exists, whatever is impermanent, it arises from a former entity that transformed in such a way to become it. In dependence on that substantial cause, it came into existence, and in dependence on those factors that assisted that substantial cause in that transformation. Okay, so I think so far, all right. So, but how that seems so solidly true, and that makes sense from our observation, how a seed, this is how a seed transforming into a sprout. Okay, that's a substantial cause of the sprout, the seed transforming. And because the light, the sun, the water, they all assisted it. So we're saying they are the cooperative conditions. But in what way does that not exist inherently? I mean, that seems so real. You can watch it. You can, well, if you're patient enough, sit in front of a seed and watch how it transforms. All right. Now, it seems very solid, but let's look at it again closer. Okay, now take the following scenario. Visualize a seed and visualize a sprout. And let's assume we didn't use different concepts. Let's say we don't call a seed and a sprout. We call seed and sprout the same thing. Okay, let's say we didn't have different concepts for those two. Would that be wrong? No, it would just be another conception. All right, so yesterday you have if you use seed and sprout, those two concepts, you talk about yesterday I had a seed, today I have a sprout. But if you don't have that concept and you would call this whole thing seed the whole time, so yesterday was a seed and today it's a seed, and only when, I don't know, many leaves have grown, etc., then you start calling it a plant, but you wouldn't call it a sprout. Let's take that scenario. Then I wouldn't say, oh, yeah, well, yesterday I had a seed and today I have a sprout. I wouldn't talk about that. I wouldn't say, oh, that seed yesterday is the cause of the sprout today. No, I wouldn't differentiate in that way. I didn't have to, right? All I would say would maybe be yesterday's seed has become today's seed, but I wouldn't talk about the arising of the sprout, okay? Just because I didn't use the concept. So that shows that the moment we apply the name sprout, then we have to say, well, when did it come into existence? When was that moment I could call it a sprout, okay? When was that moment this is now the basis for me calling it a sprout. It's merely labeled in both cases, whether I call it seed all the way through or I call it first seed and at some point sprout. It's always labeled. But because I've labeled it sprout now from today onwards, the question arises, when did it cease to be a seed? And that's when it comes in, well, it has arisen from the seed. This concept becomes part of it, but only because I started labeling it, and it becomes clear that it's only labeled. I label sprout, and the moment I label sprout on it, I need to also, explain what was the moment, or what was the time when it was no longer a sprout, when was the first moment, what was its cause, the seed it gave rise to it, and so forth. So you see, it's actually just labeled all the way through. But still, labeling has some kind of consistency. We don't just call it a cow one moment and then we call it a car and something else. No, with these functions, with these characteristics, we call it a seed, then we call it a sprout. And now we need to check what is the relation between the two. And naturally, we apply ideas such as cause of sprout and so forth. All right. So you see, it's merely labeled nonetheless. Okay. And when it's exactly a seed and when it's a sprout, from the side of the object, it's not up to the object. It's up to us to decide, when do we call it a seed? When do we call it a sprout? All right. So just that I want us to stress once again. Okay. That should be enough for that. So what did we discuss so far? The fact that we have a lot of extreme views, and all these extreme views are the result of holding on to inherent existence. And all the extreme views, there's a pretty simple, simply said, but difficult to put into practice, simple solution in understanding emptiness. That's really the end to all our extreme views. Okay, now let's look at verse 117. Okay, we're getting there, 117. Okay, now, how can we go about this? Once again, in what way do we actually deal with emptiness? Okay, so here it says, ordinary beings are chained by conceptualization. Yogis who do not conceptualize become free. All right, so it's telling us the ordinary beings, and there are those beings who are, special in the sense that they do something specific to overcome their wrong view. So conceptualization, it doesn't just mean ordinary conceptual consciousness. It specifically means these thoughts, these ideas, these conceptual minds we have that hold on to extreme views. Those are the problems. So not just any conceptualization, but extreme conceptualization. So in Atisha's Lamp of the Path, His Holiness will teach on the 13th and 14th. It's also mentioned towards the end. It also talks about a yogi gets rid of conceptions, of conceptualizations. But again, in that context, it's also talking about getting rid of these unrealistic thoughts and extreme views. Okay. And ordinary beings are controlled by those. We're chained. We're really controlled by them. We're totally controlled by them. I mean, just watch your own mind when you feel miserable and check what extreme views making me miserable. You always find some extreme views. And if in the end it's just me, that extreme view, right? Okay, so we're chained by those. We're not free because of those. Yogis, they're free. Free because they're able to overcome. So yogis as in practitioners, advanced practitioners who slowly remove these chains of extreme views. So how do we come about this? How do we free ourselves from these chains? And here Chandrakirti is very clear. The wise have said that the very cessation of conceptualization is the fruit, is the result of refined analysis. Okay, so the first step is to analyze, to use our human intelligence. And this is why there's so much emphasis in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition on study, because study just does not mean amass knowledge. That's what's often associated with study in the West, just to gain more understanding, more knowledge. I don't know, be able to answer any question. What's the longest river? What's the greatest Buddha? And what have you? It's not about that. It's about first gaining an understanding of the facts of conventional truth, right? What is impermanent, what is not, etc. And then analyze on our own example, our own mind, our own petri dish. Our own mind is our personal petri dish that we use as the basis of analysis. Where are my wrong views? How do they affect me? How do they cause me to suffer? Attentiveness, mindfulness, as Rinpoche talked about today. So we need to develop these qualities and analyze, to really check. Does it make sense? Is this view in accordance with reality? The Buddha tells us so, but that's not enough. It's never enough, someone telling us. We need to come to a first-hand conviction. We need to have this insight and go, And that's the beauty of the Dharma. You'll have these moments as you study the Dharma. These are not like big time insights. They're just little moments of, In German, we call them these moments, these moments of, well, I get it. Just tiny little moments. So these are the moments, they're so rewarding. So maybe Rinpoche gives a teaching today and you have this moment going, that's what they're talking about. And there's this collecting of these moments and deeper and deeper. So through time, your understanding grows deeper and deeper. And analytical meditation, I mean, you don't have to sit in meditation necessarily. You can just be very relaxed. Relaxed is very important. That's why analytical meditation is so helpful when it's done with a relaxed mind, because when you're not stressed, your mind can actually have these insights pop up. When you're stressed, it's really interesting. When I translate, this morning I was translating and I have to be so attentive. I keep making mistakes. I don't remember words. I call the Lord of Death in Tibetan, I called him Yawantaka. Later I was like, what was that word? And it comes back. So the moment I'm relaxed, these words come back. And so this is where analytical meditation comes in. It's in this very relaxed way. You start analyzing. But even if you can't do it in meditation, while you sit in the car, if you're in a traffic jam, while you're doing things that don't require much attention, then gently analyzing. And then these insights can come up. It's just the nature of our mind. If you do it long enough and you're calm enough, you're not uptight, you're not in any way stressed, they pop up. And sometimes you reflect upon them and nothing comes. And then later on they come. That's okay. Never mind if it's early or later. So that kind of analysis you need. This really refined analysis, okay? It's not like analysis 5 hours a day and then never again for the next 2 years. No, continuously. in a fashion. Make this also part of your day every now and then to reflect on some of the ideas of the Dharma. It doesn't have to be the deepest kind of analysis where you have to sit over books for 10 hours a day and then you're too tired to think of even just lifting your arm. Forget about refined analysis. No, it can be just the simple things. All right. So that's important. And then as it goes on to say 117, and this is an Nalanda master here, right? So verse 118, it says, analysis in the treatise is not out of fondness for debate. All right. Some people may think, oh, when they debate, they just love debating. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to do it. But that's not the reason for it. Doing this debate, it expounds suchness because it's aimed at freedom. So this way of analysis, this way of looking at things and analyzing, investigating them, that is a means to freedom. And this is Chandrakirti talking. It's not some Tibetan, debate master or something. No, this is a Nalanda master who's understood that to be a very powerful technique. If other philosophical systems are undone or are refuted in the course of expounding suchness, however, this is not a fault. So it's not like, oh, you're refuting another system. This is so negative. This is so not politically correct. No, it just happens. It is not aimed at refuting someone. It's not aimed at contradicting someone's view. It's not about that. It's about understanding reality. It's about understanding how things really exist. And it's a personal process. It's a personal process. It's not about, hey, you are wrong. We don't have to prove anyone wrong but ourselves. We can only prove ourselves wrong. So again, this debate is really basically to gain insight and help, possibly if we can, help another person, of course, also to gain that kind of insight. So therefore, if other philosophical systems are undone in the course of expounding suchness, however, this is not a fault. It may happen, but it's only a side effect of that. All right. But of course, this being a method, this being a means to gaining knowledge, and we have afflictive emotions, and let's face it, we'll carry them into our practice. And we'll develop attachment to our own views. And that's a problem. And likewise, aversion for other views. And that's also a problem. So let's be aware of that. And so upon reading this, I was reminded of the fact that when we come to the Dharma, and of course, I can imagine in your case, in my case, that was definitely the case. First, I didn't know anything about the Dharma. I was introduced to the Dharma and slowly kind of went into it. And more it became part of my own life. But did I leave behind my aversion? Did I leave behind my attachment, my arrogance, my envy, etc.? No, of course not. I brought the whole package with me. And now I applied it to the Dharma. Okay, it manifests in different ways, therefore. So if previously I had attachment, towards a lover, I had attachment towards the Lama, attachment towards the teacher, attachment towards the Buddha, etc. Previously, I was attached to certain ideas. Now I'm attached to the Dharma, to my own views, and everyone else is wrong. So that happens. And I think we need to be really careful of that. And yeah, it's especially when people come newly coming to the Dharma, they may experience this degree of disappointment, possibly having unrealistic expectations. I mean, also going to, for instance, Dharma centers. I may have spoken about this before, I don't remember, but if I did, my apologies for repeating myself. But also, we bring everything with us, and we have oftentimes unrealistic expectations. We come to a Dharma center or to a monastery, a nunnery, and believe this to be now such a special place and have all these expectations. And sometimes find, there's more samsara going on than previously, than in other places that I was in. And a lot of people, they feel put off and they feel like, oh, the Dharma doesn't work. Look at these Dharma practitioners. They're worse than my neighbors. Well, first of all, I believe the mistake lies in unrealistic expectations, because they're just human beings like we ourselves. And oftentimes they live in close proximity. People of different backgrounds are thrown together that would usually possibly not choose to have such a close relationship. But I think one aspect, and I believe it's true, you've got some crazy stuff sometimes going on. But I believe that's because, for a very good reason, people for the first time deal with their ego. Maybe for the first time. I mean, who else previously told them, well, self-cherishing, self-grasping, wrong apprehension of reality? No one ever taught me that, other than, well, the Buddhist texts, my Buddhist teachers, the Sangha and so forth. So therefore, people in that environment trying to deal with their own self-cherishing, well, we're not always that skillful, and we may repress certain aspects, and they may come through stronger. So that could be also one aspect. And it's beautiful. Actually, it's beautiful. People working with their own egos. And of course, they're repressing things sometimes, and sometimes it comes through stronger. But we should be forgiving. We should be patient, because we go through the same. We ourselves go through. I mean, I remember at times I was like so inspired by a teaching of His Holiness. So I was like, from now on, I be only loving. No more self-cherishing. And I totally suppressed any kind of anger. And before long, I was so uptight with my great compassion for everyone. And immediately I got impatient when, like, teachings were over and people were like pushing and shoving. And I was like, why are they pushing and shoving? And then I was really angry. And so I realized, wow, I was too uptight. I needed to just be calm, be relaxed, take it easy, be like a Tibetan or an Australian. They're also really laid back. So there are certain nationalities, definitely Tibetans. And that's why I think that's probably why so many Dharma centers in Australia, because people are just really laid back. We need that feeling of being laid back, being calm. And then, of course, as it said here, to be attentiveness and see when we analyze things, are we holding on to our own view, as it says in verse 119? Where is it? Do we have attachment to our own views? And likewise, aversion for others' views. Okay, do we have this? Verse 119, attachment towards own views and likewise aversion for others' views. Excuse me. All of this is just thoughts. They're just, again, extreme conceptualizations. So here, thoughts doesn't just mean ordinary thoughts, but extreme thoughts. Therefore, it is by eliminating attachment and aversion and engaging in analysis that one swiftly gains freedom. Okay, swiftly is relative. It may take a while, but well, in comparison to what we've gone through eons of samsara, eons, limitless, since beginning this time we've been in samsara. The time it takes us to gain freedom, that's like nothing in comparison. But to summarize, therefore, well, what did we learn today? It's all our extreme views which arise from that one view, the one wrong view. This is where we should focus on. That's what we need to understand. But what are the means? What are the means to overcome this wrong view, which leads to all the other extreme views? This refined analysis. Very relaxed, very truthful, very honest with ourselves, and in a very, relaxed kind of fashion. Then we need to analyze what is this, and be careful with aversion and attachment to then slowly eliminate. Firstly, reduce our attachment, reduce our anger, and then slowly attain freedom. Freedom from our wrong views. And that is what's nirvana, what is liberation, nothing more. Great, that's verse 119. So after 50 classes, we've actually gone through those. We've actually finished now selflessness of phenomena. So this huge topic, which is, a large part of the 6th chapter, we're done with this. And then for next time, we'll start with verse 120. And with this, we start with the self. You see already, it talks about the self. Self is the focus of this identity view and so forth. Great. We've got a minute extra. Oh, right. No, anyway, I don't know whether we have time for a question. If you asked your question, we're ready. So let's leave it. I've said enough for today. It was a lot. I have a question, and I definitely make some time. It's good we're done with the material, so I have the opportunity to answer the question next time, the first thing I do. And now to engage in hopefully refined and very relaxed analysis in order to gain some deeper understanding. So I want to go through some of the ideas today, and to stress this again, at the end, try to, and it's hard to say that, it's almost like telling you, try to break out in sweat. It seems something that you can't really control. But I guess you can learn to control it to some degree, to meditate, although in a very relaxed fashion, but also in a way in which it affects, this analysis affects you on a deeper level, on a emotional level to some degree. So although relaxed, but still it shouldn't just be superficial on some intellectual level, but go deeper than that. And then of course, if at the end I ask you to focus on that feeling, that gives you the opportunity to take your knowledge even to a deeper level, allow this to emerge deeper into your mind or seep deeper into your mind so that it affects you on a daily basis. All right, so let's start the meditation. And of course, as I said, it's so important to be in this relaxed state. That's why we start off with some breathing meditation to let go of any stressful or disturbing thoughts. Now, what Chandrakirti tells us is that all our extreme views, which includes our afflictive emotions such as anger and attachment, can be traced back to the root cause, to our basic misapprehension of reality. Even though our wrong sense perception is a result of our root ignorance. Which is why the solution to all our problems that is to all extreme views realizing the ultimate nature of phenomena. There's no other way to attain lasting happiness. And how can we do this? Through impartial, relaxed, and refined analysis. Of reality as it appears to us. So, what is that which we call reality? Those conventionally existent phenomena. First of all, as human beings, it is through the power of our previous karmic actions that we were born with a specific body and therefore with particular sense powers. Making the appearance of certain sense objects possible. Things that appear to a human sense faculty but not to those beings of other realms. And those different appearances we have categorized we have classified, applying different ideas and concepts, different terms based on similar characteristics and functions that we have observed. In other words, labeling, designating or imputing phenomena that appear to us. So in dependence on how they appear to us, we apply the term cloud, sky, car, tree, and so forth. About the tree being in and of itself a tree, or a cloud being inherently a cloud. Just subjectively labeled as such. But of course, it's a lot more complicated than just applying terms such as cloud and so forth to objects. We also classify, categorize certain activities and functions, such as arising and ceasing. That are also just labeled. So since to our eye consciousness, an object with a certain shape and color appears, we decide to call that object seat. And when these characteristics appear differently a while later, we decide to call it sprout. Even though from the side of the object, the side of that which appears, it's neither a seed nor a sprout. It's merely labeled. as such. And once we distinguish between this object is called a seed, now it is no longer a seed, but it's called a sprout. We also designated concepts such as the arising of the sprout and the cessation of the seed. Which is actually just another way of saying, now we call it a sprout, and we no longer call the appearance a seed. Therefore, there is no inherent arising, for it is merely labeled. It's only designated based on the fact that we call a certain appearance, or based on a certain appearance, we call something no longer seed, but sprout. And that's labeling the arising of the sprout. And this is true for everything. All that appears to us is based on its appearing characteristics and functions, labeled to be this, that, and the other. Friend, enemy, good, bad, and so forth. Now, to conclude this analytical meditation, spend a few moments applying one-pointed meditation, to focus on whatever feeling has arisen as a result of your analysis, whatever insight you've gained, allowing for it to seep deeper, to sink deeper into your mind. And then, of course, it's important to dedicate whatever positive potential we accumulated together, studying Chandrakirti's text with a positive motivation, engaging in some meditation on it. May it, of course, in the long run become one of the many causes we need to accumulate, we need to generate to attain the fully enlightened state of a Buddha. But also, right now and right here, affect those beings that we're all connected to in a positive way around us. May those like Tali Lubin, who are sick right now, very soon recover. May all those who are fearful, who are lonely, who suffer from different types of addiction, who are incarcerated, imprisoned, and so forth, find peace of mind and eventually lasting happiness by the power of our merits accumulated thus. And then let's continue to dedicate all the virtue we've accumulated in the way described by Shantideva. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled, with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain, to dispel the miseries of the world. All right, thank you very much. So please remember what we talked about in the beginning, what to do this coming week, especially generating gratitude as a means to develop more of a closeness towards other sentient beings. Just the fact that they exist is responsible for so much, well, for so many good qualities that we were able to develop. We have so much benefit just due to their existence. We can benefit from so many objects and so forth. So to remember that and work on developing this closeness and love towards other sentient beings, and continue, of course, with the mind of enlightenment and remembering emptiness whenever possible. All right, great. So have a wonderful week, and I see you again next week. All right, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Geshe-ma.
Thank you, Geshe.
Sure, you're welcome.
everybody.
Geshe-la.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Bye, Laila. Good night.
Bye, Ato.
Night.